All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Locked Door Blessings first book review. This is a different kind of review. This is a different kind of reading. What we're doing is that we're giving our participants the opportunity to learn from a book without actually reading it. So I read it and I take out the salient points, the things that are important. I give it as a presentation, and within the presentation, there will be activities that you will be involved in, and it will help you to be able to turn what's on the pages, the words of the book, into actual action. So that is what we're going to be doing here. Thank you for being the first participants of this series. We are doing chapters 1 to 3 today. It is the first of a 3-part series, and let's begin. I am going to share my screen so you can see the presentation. All right, here we go. The name of the book is The Last Arrow. When you come to the end of your days, you will not measure your life based on successes or failures. All of those will eventually blur together into a single memory called life. The author is Erwin Raphael McManus. He is an iconoclast attacking settled beliefs and institutions. He's an artist and cultural thought leader, founder of the Mosaic Church movement with several campuses, and the author of the other books that he's written, The Way of the Warrior, The Artisan Soul, Soul Cravings, and The Barbarian Way. So between the pages here, this is what we're going to be seeing. We are going to be experiencing actually what he wants to have people move from, a life that seems to be average, that seems to be dull, not enough passion and drive, and learning how to take your life into your own hands and actually propel it into the future that God designed it for. In this, he wonderfully differentiates between the past and the future, burning the past versus burning bridges, doing a job versus answering a call, and shooting your arrows versus striking them. Here we go for chapter 1. So he starts with a background on his own life, and I appreciate that. I like when people are personable. I like when they're vulnerable. And so for him to open up in the first chapter was unexpected for me. And so I liked that. He really wants to show the leap that people need to make from the past of who we are into who we will become. The name McManus belonged to the man who married his mother when Erwin was a toddler. McManus was not his biological name, nor was it even given to him, since the man refused to legally adopt him and his brother into this new emerging family. That detail alone is enough to paint the picture of the kind of head of household that this gentleman was. He was controlling, belittling, and unfortunately destructive. Many years later, after Bill McManus left their family and home, Erwin had grown up and had a family of his own. But when his son Aaron was a teenager, he wanted to meet the only man that could possibly hold the title as grandfather. they made a trip to find him. He was under another name, the name of Matthews. He was happy to see them, and for a short time, all seemed like a reasonably good effort to meet, until the final words before their departure. The last words Erwin would ever have echoed from the lips of the man he called father toward his son in his presence was this: I don't know what your dad has told you, but he was average. His brother was exceptional, but your dad, he was just average. And so now we are going to enter into our very first activity. And what I will do, I will have your images come on the side. And this activity is called Unplug from the Average. Unplug from the average. And what I want you to do, if you have pen and paper, go ahead and write down every physical sensation, attitude, thought, and imaginative actions that you have right now based on what you heard Mr. McManus say to Erwin in front of his son. So I'm just gonna have that slide come up again. When you first heard it, what were your first reactions? Think about the actual physical feelings that you're having. Did your heart palpitate? Did your mouth open? Did your eyes open? What do you feel? Do you feel anger? Do you feel disgust? What do you feel? Go ahead and take 3 minutes to just write that down. So I don't know what your dad has told you, but he was average. His brother was exceptional, but your dad, he was average. All right. Now with those notes in hand, I'm going to ask everyone to unmute. And let's take a few minutes to recreate an Erwin McManus. So what we're doing here is I want you to think about you are now given the power to change Erwin's future, but not to erase his past. How would you recreate him? What would you do to make him become something greater? You see, the thing is, those words pierced him. They pierced him not just because they were mean and not just because they were hurtful to have it said, and especially in front of his son, but because Erwin's greatest fear is that Bill McManus was right. So with that thought, and you are given the power to change his future, but not erase his past, how would you recreate him? And let's just take a few minutes to discuss that together. Please unmute. Anything from anyone? You have the power to change the life of a man. He's now a father. He has a family. He never knew his father, biological father. And the man he grew up with was abusive, belittling. And those are the last words that he hears after making an attempt to give his son some form of a heritage, some form of an identity. How do you change his life? Especially because he thinks the man is right.
I mean, I don't know how I would change his life, but I know that, like, as someone who lives in this day and age, you can really feel the way that comparing yourself to others can kind of steal your joy. So what was interesting about that to me was, like, comparing himself to his brother and also caring about this man's opinion of him is taking away his ability to just be happy in his own life and content in his own life. And sometimes, like, for me personally, if I spend too much time on social media or comparing what my life looks like to what other people's lives look like, it makes me feel unhappy with my own life and my own situation. And so it's hard to distance yourself from your family and their opinion of you, but at the same time, it's important to have, like, an identity that's rooted in yourself and your faith or what. I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know if he's a Christian at this point, but it's important to separate what you think of your life and what you think of yourself versus from what other people think of your life or what other people think of you, just to, like, keep yourself happy.
Okay, so here's my question for you. How would you actually help him to be able to not have that, not deal with the comparison? You have the power to change everything in his future, not in his past. How do you do that? Anyone can jump in. How would you actually give him steps to pass that, to get over it?
Usually it sounds like that old cliche of when you paint the picture of this is how your life could be if you want to take that path, if you continue to take a certain path, you can introduce the idea that usually if you want your life to be different and you're encouraging someone to take a different path, then they have the opportunity, they have the option to do that. So basically you're telling them there is no one way. There are other ways you can take. You don't have to be this way. You can tell that person, listen, I'm telling you this not because your life is going to be this way, but it can be this way if you allow this and this and this and this in your life to take over how you live your life. So I guess if you introduce the idea that there's other venues you can go in your life where you have control to go to do something else. You don't have to follow in these footsteps. You can follow your own footsteps. But maybe take the past as a template as to what not to follow if you don't see that going that route of your life is going to, if it's going to make you feel a certain way or make you not move on a certain part of your life. I don't know how to explain it.
That's all right. It's good to talk it through because I'm gonna give some more pushback, and this is my last pushback. He believes Bill McManus is correct about him. You have the power. How do you get a man who, it's not that he's doing badly. He's grown up. He obviously has forgiven this man to some extent to look for him, find him, have his son meet him. How do you, he has no issue seemingly on the outside until this comment is made. And his biggest fear is that the man is right. He's just average.
Okay. So if I have unlimited power,
unlimited
I would
power,
put another person in his life that he views as exceptional, another father figure in his life, and have that father figure tell him that he's exceptional. So he needs to hear from someone he views as exceptional that he's exceptional, so that you have another voice to counteract this Bill guy who's not even really his dad. That's what you were asking.
No, because I want to know actual steps. It's easy to talk about things in a theory, but yeah, that's what I'm going for. That's what you would do, put someone else. So, Antonia, are you about to say something?
Yeah, for me, the thing is, he, to some degree, he has acknowledged that he is average. You know, perhaps he never identified with it before until he heard the words that, you know, I could be more. Probably he was never even comparing himself or his achievements to those of his brother until he actually heard those words. So, one, not changing the past, it was necessary for him to hear that. So, you know, it's to, yes, conversation is important, dialogue, you know, trying to get into his headspace. Okay, now that you are faced with this reality and you acknowledge that this is where you are and that you can become more, what would you like to become? Where do you see yourself? It's almost, I mean, the word these days people use is coaching. So you have a life coach, a personal coach, whatever it is. So you kind of coaching and training him to have that mindset of wanting more, becoming more, and helping him along, you know, keeping him accountable to achieving. So perhaps have him identify some goals that he would like to achieve beyond where he is now. And then you as the accountability partner now, you know, checking in every now and then. What have you done towards, you know, getting closer to that goal? So that's my 2 cents.
Wow, that's really good. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I can't add to it. But I think you're both correct. To have another voice speak the opposite of what has been spoken to you is important. And to know when you're not really being who you need to be is also equally important. If it is that we just pat everybody on the back and say, you're always doing a great job, when they're not, we're not actually helping them. So I think this is one of those situations where your enemy has done you more good than harm. If you have the mental stamina to get over what has been done or said. All right, awesome, thank you. I am going to continue the presentation. Let me just minimize everybody here. All right. So that's unplugging. So don't stop until you're finished. And in the book, he brings out this story from 2 Kings 13, when one of the kings of Israel is actually seeking guidance from Elisha the prophet. And I mean, Elisha is on his deathbed, you know, and still the king he needs this help because Syria, their enemies, are upon them and they need help. And so Elisha gives a very interesting response to his plea. he tells him to open the window and pick up his bow. And Elisha then pulls himself up on the bed, and he puts his hands on the hands of the king. And pulling back the arrow, they shot an arrow eastward through the window. And with that, Elisha proclaimed that Israel will be delivered from Syria. But it doesn't stop there. Elisha then tells King Joash to strike the remaining arrows on the ground. And when he did it, King Joash struck his arrows 3 times. When he did that, Elisha became infuriated with him and asked him why he only hit the ground 3 times, that he should have continued until nothing was left. So now, instead of having complete victory over the Syrians, Israel will only have victory 3 times. When you first read such an account in the Bible, it seems extremely unfair, because he wasn't told to strike the ground until nothing was left. He was simply told to strike the ground. But there is something wanting and lacking in the king, and that is his constant dependence on another man instead of using the leadership that he has to go the full way. And so while tomorrow is coming and we cannot control how tomorrow comes, the future comes because of what you do. So God is the only one who can truly deliver us from things that are too strong for us, from the eternal enemy, if you want to say. But we are expected to use our arrows to live victoriously over the kingdom of darkness in our own lifetime. And so that is really, really crucial, a crucial story, an unfortunate story, but hopefully a lesson that we can learn for ourselves. It's one thing for God to save us, it's another thing to live out a life that's actually victorious. Chapter 2. Leave nothing for the next life. And in this story, Erwin opens up with a professional surfer, Mick Fanning. He had been a winner of several ASP World Tours. And during a 2015 competition in South Africa, he found, as well as all those who were watching, to his horror, that he had to start fighting off a shark in the water. And he was able to get out unscathed. 6 days later, he was surfing again. And he had yet another near shark attack. Anyone with common sense would call it a day and kiss the waters of surfing goodbye, but not Fanning. He represents the mindset of those who seem to have a different way of living, a different way of overcoming. And when he was asked why won't he give up surfing since he had, these near shark attacks, he said, surfing got me through the hardest times in my life. So to turn my back on surfing wouldn't be right. I'm gonna say that again. Surfing got me through the hardest times in my life. So to turn my back on surfing wouldn't be right. We are at our next activity. This one is fondly called spot the shark. I am going to have us come down the side view again. And here is your question. What shark-infested waters have you gotten out of? What shark-infested waters have you gotten out of? So I have in the next slide some words. And let me just minimize you. I want you to go ahead and unmute yourselves and just shout out which one of these things you personally have fled from. That became for you what is like a shark infested water, and you fled. Go ahead.
Not asking for what you really want.
I definitely ran away from a job.
Well, a few.
Go ahead.
Telling a boss no. And not telling someone that you've fallen for them. Yeah, those are the two that jump out at me, but I'm sure there may be another one or two.
Nobody wants to say not passing gas even when it hurts.
No.
especially if you just start dating somebody, huh? You certainly don't want to do that. How about taking out a loan for a venture? Anybody like thought about it and then you're like, nah. You ran away from that?
I would say a job for me.
Not rejecting an unwanted gift. Maybe that.
That's a tough one.
That's yeah.
For me, not ending a relationship when it was obviously done. Yeah. And the other one, repeatedly rewording thoughts so as not to come across as offensive. Instead of just saying what's on my mind, I keep on like going through and changing.
I would say that too.
Or I do that after an interaction, going over what I could have said differently, even though it's already happened.
True. Yes, I do that too. Any other? Is there anything not on here that somebody thinks that, oh, this is a shark infested water for me and I got out? All right, thanks. Let's move on. So when reality hits, do you really care about how you get there? And that there is your goal, your life goal, your dream. Do you really care about it? Interestingly enough, salesmen and stores understand the power of being in the moment. You see, if someone is on the fence about making a purchase, the salesperson understands very well that if he or she allows the person to walk away, even if they say they're going to come back and make the purchase, it is highly unlikely that they do. And so Erwin, he took a humbling experience and made it into something now for which he is great. It was 9/11. The towers were taken down from that terrorist attack on US soil, and speakers were already booked all across the country, but they started canceling their speaking engagements to masses. It began with one call. He said yes to one call to speak when he was not even previously a consideration for speaking. And that one yes led from one invitation to another until he was flooded with invitations, because the word got out that he would be willing to fly. He would be willing to hop on a plane and go across the country. And surely he was seen as having no regard for his own life and welfare. So he was quickly replacing the biggest names in the speaking space. Many of them were well known for their messages of faith, courage, and risk. But under these circumstances, they felt that it was better to cancel and not get on a plane. So Erwin had to get over the fact that he was being called not because he was wanted, but because he was available. He had the choice to have it sour his opportunities or to lick up every drop of gravy. Time seduces us into believing that it is the one friend who will never run out on us. It tricks us into believing that we can wait until tomorrow to do the things we should have done yesterday. But one unifying characteristic of those who leave nothing for the next life is a sense of urgency. And so now we're going to go into a very quick but fun activity. And I am going to have this drop down. You're going to unmute yourselves. If you have a physical dictionary, go ahead and get it out. If you can do it on your phone, go ahead and go to the dictionary. And what I want you to do, after I say on your marks, get set, go, you are going to look up each word that we have here. Don't start yet. You're going to look up fuel, passion, conviction, compassion, desperation. And so this is a race. All right, so when you find the first word, you just jump up, read out the definition, sit back down, and get to your next word. If you find that someone has gone ahead of you and gotten the first word, you still need to do it, because I am looking for more than one winner. All right? So you're going to need to be unmuted, because I need to hear your voice. If I don't hear your voice when you're reading your definition, it doesn't count, even if you're standing. All right? On your mark, get set, go.
Where's the Wi-Fi somehow? Combustible matter used to maintain fire as coal, wood, oil, or gas in order to create heat or power.
Awesome.
Passion, any powerful or compelling emotion or feeling as love or hate.
Good job.
Conviction, a fixed or firm belief.
No, go ahead. No, if it's the same word, go ahead. Go ahead, Antonio.
Okay. Conviction, a firm belief, confidence, convicting or being convicted.
Compassion, sympathetic pity, and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others.
Oh, I can't see the last word.
Desperation, the state of being desperate or of having the recklessness of despair.
Woo! Is that 3 for you now, Janoise?
2? I don't know. I lost track.
That's okay. Continue. No. I need more than one winner. I need 3 winners, so you have to continue. Just continue.
Desperation, a state of despair, typically one which results in rash or extreme behavior.
All right. So that's 2 for Antonio, 2 for Janoise, 2 for Orlando. Come on, Chantal, you can do this.
Compassion, a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering.
All right, we have, go ahead, Antonio.
Fuel, material burnt as a source of energy, something that increases anger, etc.
All right, 2 more people need to come up.
Fuel, a thing that sustains or inflames passion, argument, or other emotion or activity.
Awesome, 1 more person.
Desperation, the state of being desperate or having recklessness of despair.
Awesome. Give yourselves a clap.
Yeah.
Good job. All right, so let's continue, and you'll see what your prize is in a minute. And the winners are reading. Congratulations. So this is what's going to happen. The first winner is Antonia. So you're winner number 1. Rolando, you're winner number 2. And Chantal, you're winner number 3. And I am going to give Janoise my part to read. So we have no losers here. All right. So winner number 1. Let me just minimize this and go ahead and read on what you see on the screen, please.
Urgency can be fueled by many things: passion, conviction, even compassion. But often I find that urgency in its rawest form is fueled by desperation. The shift that happens when you refuse to remain or be defined by the average comes when you cross a line others would consider madness. While everyone around you says it can wait, you know it can't. I find that we are often more comfortable speaking about passion than about urgency, but it is urgency that gives our passions deadlines. Passion is about what fuels us. Urgency is about how it matters right now.
All right, thank you. Rolando. Rolando.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Oh.
Sorry. The most important things in life rarely come with urgency. It may seem counterintuitive, but the most important things in life are most easily pushed to the back burner. The urgent is rarely the most important, but the most important must always be the most urgent. The most important things in life require that you bring your own urgency. Passion is the fuel that brings urgency to the things that matter most.
Chantal?
The last arrow isn't about what you can do or could do. It's about what you must do. It's not about maximizing your potential or achieving your personal greatness. It's about being consumed with an importance and urgency that are bigger than us. Rare are those who allow themselves to be consumed by things that are bigger than they. And though the shift from unconsumed to consumed is subtle, it is seismic.
Right. And Janoise.
You'll be hard-pressed to find any story in the scriptures in which God becomes angry because someone has too much faith, too much determination, too much resolve. The truth is, we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. God puts the bow and the arrows in our hands and tells us to shoot and to strike. And instead of pressing the limits of what God could do in and through our lives, we assume that his intention for us is less, and so we settle for what we can do rather than what God intended to do through us.
Wonderful, thank you. And that's the end of chapter 2. We're coming up to the last chapter, chapter 3, and this is Choose the Future. All right, so this story in chapter 3 was very gripping to me as a woman, and as I go through it, you'll understand. So At the Intercontinental Hotel, there's a restaurant, and its hostess is called, her name is Albie Cardona. In 1958, her take-home pay for the month was $100. She was beautiful and brilliant, and she fell in love with her language professor. At the age of 16, she ran away from an overbearing home and eloped into an extremely dangerous marriage. From under the roof of excessively strict parents to the fists of her alcoholic and abusive man, she jumped out of the frying pan into the fire itself. While working, she was engaged by a Pan Am executive. Known for their exceptionally beautiful flight attendants, she was approached, complimented, and then invited to the man's hotel room on the 7th floor. Now, I can imagine any woman here would say, absolutely not. I'm in a domestic violence situation. A man who I do not know is complimenting me and telling me to come to his hotel room. No. No woman on this platform right here, I think, would say yes to that. And so Albie is like us. She was one such woman. She was the kind that learned from her mistakes. So she pleasantly declined the offer and continued working. Towards the end of the day, Albie saw a friend in the restaurant on her day off and was curious why she was there. Her friend ecstatically asked her if she hadn't heard that Pan Am Airlines was conducting job interviews on the 7th floor in the hotel. In that moment, her deepest fear reached its heights. She misread, misunderstood, and dismissed an opportunity for a completely different future. As if her life was leaving her very grasp, she left. She ran as fast as she could to the 7th floor. The interviews were conducted, the applicants left, the executive packed up, and he was just at the room door. Surprised and remembering her, he said that he thought she wasn't interested in the job. She apologized that she misunderstood the offer, but there were no more application forms left. So he handed blank sheets of paper to Albie to sign. He took them and left. Shortly thereafter, signs of a completely new life came in the offer of a new career and a new country. So let's talk. Based on the above story, how can someone spot a life-changing opportunity when it is packaged like a past or a current dysfunctional experience? I'm gonna say that again. Let me just bring this down so you can see the whole thing. Based on the above story, the story that I just read, how can someone spot a life-changing opportunity when it is packaged like a past or current dysfunctional experience? Please unmute and let's talk.
That's a tough one.
How do we recognize an opportunity being a real opportunity and not another trap? That's basically what that's saying. Because based on her experience, which was still current at the time, it looks like she would have put herself in the same problem. And the unfortunate thing is that good opportunities don't always come looking like they're the best opportunities. So how do we spot a real opportunity that is packaged like something that we've been through that has caused us hurt or even harm? This is a very, very important part for us to talk about, because unless we can start seeing the differences, we really don't get anywhere in our lives. We keep on thinking something is too risky and we don't step out. So let's talk.
I don't know if it's so easy to spot a life-changing opportunity. As in the case of Albi, I mean, everything is fresh in your mind. You know, it's oftentimes very difficult to separate or to decipher through all the everything at play. And well, for me, I'm thinking, you know, you would need some more information, some more details. So perhaps you may have to ask questions, some probing questions. Questions though that would not hint at what you are thinking, but seeking information. So you'd structure the question in a way to seek information rather than it suggesting your thoughts.
Okay. But what happens when you don't have the time to go through all of that? This is an executive. He knows what he's doing. He knows how many people will want this job. It doesn't say that he offered any explanation apart from that very awful thought of just come to my hotel room on. It says that, you know, he said if you want a job opportunity, but prostitution is a job opportunity too.
Exactly.
Yeah, going off of what Antonia said, is like, I don't think that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that you can sometimes spot a life-changing opportunity. I think sometimes we have to go forward blindly and just say yes. And like, you know, maybe she could have said yes and gone to the hotel room and seen that it wasn't, you know, malicious or suspicious. And sometimes you have to go forward not knowing and like, you know, take the risk, basically.
I mean, it's a serious risk. I mean, she's in a domestic violence relationship with a man who's a professor. So this was not someone who you would expect. And so for this other man to be coming well-dressed, also well-spoken, and especially to be complimenting her on her physical appearance, and then talking about hotel room, that's dangerous, because what if she knocks on the door and then he overcomes her, you know? But how do we help ourselves? I think one good step is to be able to reframe a question so that our fears are not automatically like seen. I think that's a very, very good action step. But what else? How else can we step out? Chantal said, go, and then you find out. Anything else?
I kind of tend to agree with Chantal a little bit about that, but listening to the story, it tends to make me think it's a trust issue thing where, okay, she's lived through this. She knows that her actions, her decisions have already led her into the life that she's in now. So if she's in a position where she is willing to she's open for new opportunities no matter what they are, that means she's willing to go beyond her own trust and just, like Chantel's saying, just go for it and see what happens. It's only at that moment that she can find out. She could find out before she takes the step. She can ask questions and find out information, or she can just go blindly into it and find out for herself if this is what she thinks it is or if it's not what she thinks it is. So that's my take.
Antonia, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm just listening to Rolando and Chantel, and I'm saying, but these are things we do every day. We step into the unknown every day. We don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what is going to happen when we go through our doors, when we go out on the streets. I mean, this whole COVID-19 thing has everybody up in arms and, worried. But we still have to go do things like go to the supermarket. We're going to come in contact with a lot of other people. So yes, stepping into the unknown and trusting for the best, certainly. But there's still going to be reservations. But yeah.
All right.
I think
good job.
Also made a point in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it, so you have to tell me what it is.
Yes, Tammy made a point in the chat. She said, personally, I think I would have to be freed from the past so that I can trust my healthy gut moving forward.
Wow, that's a good one. That's a good one. I think the thing that stands out to me as we're having this discussion is that one friend. That one friend that just happens to be there on her day off. She could trust one person. So she was not to the point where she was completely, and this is a real thing for real women who are in domestic violence situations. They don't have friends. They don't have someone outside of that kind of relationship that can give them a nudge. She just so happens to be able to have the freedom to work without the man being there over her shoulder, kind of watching from across the street or something like that. But realize this is 1958. More than likely that same story would not look the same today. And so for me, it tells me that being able to just even have one person who's kind of in your corner, that person can help to, from any kind of circumstance, be able to nudge you in the right direction. Here's my question to you. It was at the end of the day. She's still at work. She's on the clock. Who would have run, left their post, and still go to the hotel room? Okay, now you know the hotel room is safe, but you're expecting it to be done. You've left your post and you don't know if the time it takes you to go, when you come back, you will still have a job. Who would go after it as if it is their last breath?
Someone who's fed up. They don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, from experience, my mom is a flight attendant. So I know that at the time, like, for a woman, that job was such a glamorous job. Like, you could see the world. Your whole life would be expanded, your whole worldview. And, like, it was kind of like a job for dreamers at the time a little bit, because nothing else existed that was like that. So I totally would have run. I probably personally wouldn't have gone with him initially, but I would have run when I found out that.
Anybody else would be willing to just drop their current job and go for something else that you don't even know if the door has closed on you?
it comes back to what Janois read, you know, the sense of urgency
Right.
and the passion, you know. She knew she needed to do something because her situation had to change. And in order for my situation to change, it will require me to take action.
Mhm.
So, and it required taking action, you know, identifying with that sense of urgency. And
Yes.
as you said, identifying the opportunity, which her friend, you know, was able to shed some more light on, you know, that,
Mhm.
hey, you know, this is safe. Not knowing that she had heard about it before, but, you know, she got confirmation that from her friend that this was a safe opportunity.
All right. Here's the last question. Deep into your own souls, your current jobs. Has there been an opportunity for which you needed to step away from your current job and go after your dream?
Not my current job, but the job I had before this one.
All right.
That's how I got the job I got now. Is I was working at another job. Should I explain?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
This is a
I'll
learning
make it.
experience.
So the last job I was doing was my foot in the door in the industry that I wanted, but it wasn't exactly using all the skills that I'm qualified to do what I went to school for, so forth. So I prayed to the Lord. I said, Lord, you open up opportunities for me. Thank you for giving me this one. But if I have any other opportunities that come in my way, I'm gonna jump on it and take the first one that comes. And I did pray that. I did that prayer. And you know what happened? I got a call from my cousin who was in the industry and he was working at another company. And it wasn't from him, but he told me a friend of his that was working next to him in the company was looking for someone with my skill set, was looking for some, and my cousin thought of me because he knew I graduated school and I had these skills that could be used. So he recommended me to this guy, and the guy called me up and he first of all, he asked me, is that okay? And I said, yeah, sure. And this was already answering my prayer. So this is after the fact that the job that I was in currently, before I took this one, I already had spoken to my manager and told him, he was like, oh, we're looking for people who are going to stay here. We're going to be committed to the job. And I was almost approaching my 1 year anniversary. So right before then, I was almost in committed mode. Like, okay, I'm going to stay here. And I was making less money because it was my first job. So then I was like, but then I prayed this prayer and then this job came and I was like, Lord, I told you, I asked you, Lord, if you give me something, you send it my way, I'm going to take it. And I took it. And then this is after I had a meeting with my manager and told him, oh, I'm happy to be here. I'm not going to go anywhere. And then all of a sudden I'm going somewhere. And I felt bad, but he understood. I was honest with him. And that was it. I took the opportunity. I took an interview and I went for it. So
I'm glad you said that part. Thank you so much for sharing that, Orlando. But that part where you said where, you felt bad, but you still went for it. Many people will feel bad, and I have been one of those people. You think that once you give your word, you are never, ever, 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 ever to break it. And so you stay with something you don't want to stay with because you've given your word. And you want to maintain a certain kind of reputation as a person who keeps their word, and so it's trustworthy. But yeah, I'm so glad you did that, because now you can share with us. Anybody else? Is there something that, if you think all the ducks were in a row and it was perfectly lined up, that you could see the end from the beginning, you would leave?
I would, but maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not a risk taker. I like security because I've definitely have wanted to leave my job now for the past 4 years. But because everything isn't lined up, that's why I haven't left. So
right. It's good to be honest. We need to know exactly where we're at.
So I feel like at some point I will move, but I want to make sure more things are in line before that happens.
Okay. Anybody thinking, oh, I'll just save from my current job and then I can go buy my dream? Anybody thinking that way? I'll stay here because I can save money to get what I really want.
Well, certainly not where I am. You know, life throws a lot at you every day, and you know, today you're thinking you have everything under control, you know, you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and then tomorrow comes, or a minute from now, something else pops up, you know. So I identify with Janice because I think for me, I like the thought of being secure,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when you have children, you know, it's difficult to step out into the unknown. Sometimes you see other persons do it and you say, how did they do it? You know, and you keep telling yourself, I need to take that step, I need to take that step, but it just never happens. And so you opt to remain where you feel secure. Though for me, I have changed positions, I've moved up, but you still don't get that sense of satisfaction because so previously if you're in a position and you're there for very long, you feel like you're being stifled and your potential, there's no growth, no development, and so you feel a little stifled. When you change to a position at a higher level, you will see some amount of growth, but because you're in the same space, you don't get to expand the way you could have.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm at,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and really think I need to work on that, you know, the stepping out part.
Okay. Well, let me thank you very much for sharing. I really, really appreciate it. This is where I will tell you that Albie is Erwin's mom.
Oh.
And
Wow.
the story continued. In order to take that job opportunity, she needed $250 to get to the training space that was in a completely different city. She only made $100 per month, and she needed $250. And so she had to turn to her parents to ask them to keep her boys and to give her $250. And the father absolutely refused. He wanted to teach her a lesson for being the young lady that eloped and, thought he was too strict. So he said no. And she had to get there. I think it was in a really short period of time. I don't know if it was a week or so. And it was actually the cook in the restaurant who heard of her dilemma and gave her the $250. So she had to leave her children. I was just thinking here about what Antonia said about, there are certain steps that is much harder to make when you have children involved. She had to leave her children with the people she ran away from. And so at the time, it wasn't necessarily easy for her sons to understand why mom had to leave them. And so that was her out. That is how she got out of her very abusive relationship, went to a new city, learned new skills, saw the world. And every time a plane flew over, Erwin and his brother would point and say, "Mommy's there, that's mommy, that's mommy," Very heart-wrenching to read that, because he started off the story in chapter 1 with with the man who married his mom, and then you get to chapter 3 and realize, hold up, this was her, this is what happened to her. But obviously, with the life he ended up having, it was the right choice. And sometimes there are really, really hard choices to make for yourself in order to make it better for those that you love. Right? So this is where we say, kiss your past goodbye. Let me just quickly minimize us here so you can see everything. Whether it's long and soulful, passionate and gripping, a quick smooch or a peck on the cheek, kiss your past goodbye. You see, Erwin shares that many of us keep longing for a new future while holding on to the past. And if we're not careful, our future will simply be an extension of our past. We must separate the moments behind us from the moments in front of us, because moments will define us. They carry the greatest weight. They create the future we want, but will not easily be integrated in our past. They are disruptive moments when we choose them. And it cuts off that extension of that past, actually creating a brand new future. So here's cheers to your future. Differentiating the essence of who you are versus what you do is a very, very thin line. It is difficult for us to always know the difference between what we do is not who we are. So while doing versus doing as if being are crucially opposing. If your identity is rooted in your success, then you will lose who you are when failure comes. And it's not if failure comes, it's when it comes. Every successful person has experienced failure. Every extremely successful person has experienced extreme failure. And Erwin talks about overhearing a conversation. He was in the airport with a friend, and he ended up getting more involved in a conversation that did not involve him, because he heard the man talking about losing $10 million. And Erwin's first question in his mind is, what kind of man gets the opportunity to lose $10 million? And so he goes into that story. And if you ever choose to get the book, it was very, very interesting to hear what that gentleman did. So your past is not some horrible experience to throw out like dirty rags, you know? Let it be the fuel to the passion that you have that will thrust you into your future. Albie did that. Her experience of living a long period of time with an abusive man, and obviously parents, or I should say specifically a dad, who would even try to thwart any possible good for her, which now that we hear this part of it, I would have wanted to elope as well. Being able to use that past to take her into her future. That is the fuel that she used to be able to be separated from her children for long periods of time, to possibly work extreme long hours, learning and having to relearn, and adapting to languages in different countries and all of that. What she had to do was use her past to fuel her getting through everything that she did for the sake and the benefit of her children. So use your past as your launching pad. Though you can't escape the reality of what it has been, you are not to be ruled by it. the most spiritual thing you will do today is choose. And that is the end of the presentation. All 3 chapters. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will look forward to the other chapters 4 through 6 next week, and 7 through 9, and then we'll be done with the book. Any thoughts, any comments, anything that seems to be bubbling up in your inner core and you're just like, ugh, I just need to grunt because this thing is like pushing me. For instance, this meeting pushed me to my limits. I previously would have given up by try number 3 to get this presentation off the ground, and so I had to prove to myself I can get through this. I can do this, no matter how many times Zoom wants to boot me off my own meeting. I can get through this. I will get through this, and it has happened. So now I have one experience to kind of give me the taste of what it feels like to push through. To push through, even though there seems to be different things happening outside of my control that I could not get through. But pushing through, because I had friends like you to say, it's okay, we'll start over again. It's okay. You know, and so I really want to say thank you. For me, this is definitely an experience from the book itself. Any comments, any questions, anything before we go?
Well, actually, I was hoping that the meeting could continue and continue and continue and continue. You know, it's very refreshing how you presented the summary and just bringing us back to reality. I mean, we live reality every day, but sometimes you have to stop and take check because, you know, you always hustle bustling, trying to get this done, trying to get that done, and probably not stopping to do some introspection or retrospection and taking stock of where you want to be and, you know, what it requires for you to get there. And, you know, for me, there are a few points that hit home for me, you know, when you referred to the part about abusive relationship and the fact that Albi was Erwin's mom and she took that step, because it also reminded me of the decision my mother took when we were much younger to step out and grasp an opportunity that she saw available to bring things together for us. So, yes.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I guess I'll say one thing. It made me think a lot of this discussion from these chapters made me think a lot about my personal life reflection. There were moments in my life, specifically like when I was in elementary school. I remember just as being a student trying to figure out how was I going, you know, what kind of a student did I want to be? What kind of a person was this going to make me be, depending on how I took information in and applied it in my life and in other things in my life? Because, you know, if you become a good student, then that does help you in other parts of your life, depending on where you are in life, right? So I just remember there was a time in my life where I didn't want to settle for average. And I knew that if I just settled for average, that was just a low bar for me. And that, like, I just remember that you're right. You mentioned that sometimes you do have to have that extra voice there to kind of push it. And I had I had mentors in my life that God put in my life that pushed me to think in ways I never would have thought on my own because I just didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So without having certain people in my life, I would never have thought about this and this career, or just elevating how I did things, how I like to push myself to study harder, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I applied that all throughout my life, and just hearing all this stuff through this book just brought that out again. So
That's good. That's good.
So thanks.
Yeah, I'll say something too, is like a couple of things that stuck out to me with this study was the thought about choosing our future, and also the sense of urgency, because those things are really pertinent to me right now. Like, I would say, you know, like obviously I'm still a young person, but as a younger person, I did not think about my future, and I did not make choices in regards to how they would affect my future. I was very go with the flow, like things will work out, you know, whatever, that kind of mentality. But like, it's true that we have to, you know, if we want our life to go in a certain direction, we have to make choices and take action that's going to get it there, and not just hope and think that things will develop the way that we want them to. But sometimes, like going to sense of urgency, sometimes we need that fire under our butt to make us choose, to force our hand almost. Like with the COVID-19 that's happening, that's what's happening to me, is like a lot of things in my life are forcing my hand to sit down and be like, okay, this was what my life was like. What do I want my life to be like? And I have to make choices, and they're hard choices that I put off making because, you know, life was okay. Life was fine. Maybe it was average, but it was fine. So yeah, I really liked that. That was what spoke to me, was the sense of urgency and the importance of, you know, thinking and choosing and planning and and, you know, doing it with a sense of optimism too, I think is important.
I see Jeanette's like, Jeanette's like, I will speak for myself. Some of the best stories that I have now of my life came from those times, Chantal, when I was forced to make a decision. So I was in Jamaica when something happened really bad that caused me to run out of my home with 2 weeks worth of clothes, and I never returned. I never returned to live there. I had to run. I felt extremely unsafe. And so that experience, though I had been advised by friends, I had a friend who had a dream that said, no, I don't think you should live there, all of these sorts of things. And I said, I gave my word. I gave my word and I'm sticking to it. And it turned out very, very badly. And so I ran, as I said, with 2 weeks worth of clothes. And then I got the very quick feeling of what it must be like to go homeless. I wasn't homeless, but I had that sense, that terror of not having a place, a shelter. And I mean, I had my car, so I kept on driving and looking in the papers for apartments. And I just couldn't get anything. And a friend of mine knew someone who could, you know, let me kind of crash there. And it was completely outside of my comfort zone, you know, the kind of place I would want to live in and that sort of thing. But those 2 weeks living, feeling almost homeless, I mean, my most fabulous townhouse sat where it sat. and I am in this dark spot with one lamp for a light and dripping ceilings and all kind of stuff. And those 2 weeks pressured me. And from those 2 weeks, I came to the US to visit my family. I spent only 1 week in New York and headed straight to Wisconsin, where that Sunday that I went to the church there with a friend, that Sunday heard of a new women's group that, they were going to be starting this women's group against human trafficking. And I had just done, personal study for 2 years on human trafficking. And here it is, I'm hearing of that. I'm like, what, who, where? And I go around and I get the number for the lady, and she was all the way in California. And I pick up the phone and I said, hey, I hear that you're gonna have a missionary trip to Thailand. And she said, well, we called it off. I'm like, you just had the meeting Friday, today is Sunday. How did you call it off? And she said, we decided we are moving there. And I was like, moving to Thailand? What do you need? I can help with documents. I can do this. Why? I had already just gone through something to push me that by the time I heard of this, something that just sparked inside of me, I wasn't going to sit down. I was like, I can do this. I can help. I can blah, 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 blah. And they weren't ready at the time. But 6 months later, I found myself, I went from, I don't have any money to go to Thailand. So now I had to be like setting up and asking people for money. Ooh, talk about hitting the pride. That did it. I was like, fundraising, not my thing at all. But I'll never forget, I'd get a $20 here, a $10 here. I needed $1,800 just for the airfare. The people that I was going to go help, they were charging rent plus food. So I remember it was such a stripping experience, going through layers of humbling myself. And anyway, one very sweet little lady said, come with me, darling. And she drove me and she went inside the bank and she came out with an envelope and she said, this is for you. I don't want you to look at it until you get back. And when I got back and opened it, it was $1,200. And wow. I was just like, what? And so before I knew it, there are other details that would make your head spin. It was crazy, but I had to send away my passport to Canada to get a Thai visa. It couldn't go to Jamaica. It couldn't be done in the US. It was all kinds of stuff. But I had learned urgency and desperation from that experience. And I had to choose. If I did not leave the US at that time, I had to go back to Jamaica. And if I went back to Jamaica, the trip more than doubled to go to Thailand. So I was completely boxed in and forced to make a choice. A new future in a land I've never been to. I don't speak the language. I don't know the people I'm going to help, or go home. I chose it, and my life has been extremely colorful ever since. Have I drawn back into that needing a security and safety net? Yes. And I think this is my next push, and boxing is COVID thing. It's the next boxing in. And so let me just encourage you all, Janoise, step out. I think one of the things it really talks about it said about the urgency, but the thing about millennials, young people, they keep on thinking that they have time. They have time to make a decision. And if you follow Albie's story, sometimes some opportunities only come once. And it's not a nice thing to say, and it's not a nice thing to hear, but it's true. I am sure there are some opportunities I have completely smashed, completely could have had a very different life and didn't make use of it. You know, one of those things was when I ended up in Singapore. They had a matching savings thing where they would take out 20% of your salary and invest it, and then whenever you're leaving, they would match it and give you those funds back. However, I could barely pay the rent with my salary. And I had financial obligations in Jamaica to continue paying. And so I was just like, I can't do it. And my boss pleaded with me in person, in private, and said, you need to do this. I said, I don't even know how long I'm gonna be here. I don't know how long I'm gonna be here. Every time we go to this meeting, they're saying, we will start, haven't started. They keep on giving presentations, but they can't say where exactly the money is going to. Everything just sounds very like lackadaisical. It's not really happening. And you're gonna take money from me, holding it for I don't know how long, while I cannot live in a different country if you take the 20%. Well, guess what? I should have taken the 20% out of my pay and go without food, because in about 4 months later, I got the call for my green card and I had to come to the States. I had to leave the job. And I got in hand $4,500 versus $11,600. I should have taken the 20%. And so those were one of the things, and I like that Tammy talked about being freed so you can trust. The truth is, I didn't trust my boss. I didn't trust him. We didn't know. I was only there for a year. We didn't know each other long enough. There were too many other kind of politics that was going on in the office to make me feel like I could trust no one, not even one person in that office. And so when I was getting the right kind of advice, I couldn't take it. I couldn't accept it because I did not trust. And so my encouragement to you over this week until we meet again, you need to have a trusting relationship first with God to be able to trust others. And at that point, I still had issues, obviously, with God. Although he had taken me to Thailand and to Singapore, there still are issues of trust in our relationship with him and in our relationship with each other. And we need to work those out, because things can happen and you can really, really lose out. Not that your life is going to crash and burn, but it could be so much better. Let's go for so much better. Let's not make Mr. Bill McManus right. Let's not be average. Let's be above average. Okay? That's it. Thank you very, very much. I will end right here the recording.